Hi, this is Deacon Larry, and this is Renewed. Welcome back to Renewed. We're in that wonderful time of the year when we celebrate the Feast of Pentecost, now past, the Feast of the Holy Trinity, last weekend, this Sunday up ahead, the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ. When I was talking about the Feast of the Holy Trinity, I talked about God for us. The Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ is the very intentional way in which we reflect on the way God is for us and present to us as body and blood in the celebration of the Eucharist, the great feast of thanksgiving of the Church. When we talk about the Feast of the Body and Blood, we can reflect, we're called in this year to reflect on the Eucharist, that is both meal and sacrifice and real presence. All three different ways to reflect on this wonderful gift. As a meal, we're called to come to the table. We say that so often here at St. Theresa, how all are welcomed and invited to come to the table to receive what? To receive the body and blood of Christ. It's interesting when you watch First Communions, as you watch children, and they receive the host and consume that host for the first time, and then the nervousness with which they approach the cup. I think very often at home, the parents might be saying to them, be careful about drinking that wine. A reminder for us, we have no wine at church after the consecration. We have no bread. We have the great mystery of the body and blood of Christ given to us as a meal. That is a complete meal when we're able to share and partake of both the body and the blood. That's why during the pandemic it was so difficult, because it was as if we were celebrating with an incomplete meal when we didn't have access to the cup. So, one image of the body and blood of Christ, one understanding, one theology is meal. The other is sacrifice, because in this moment, we have Jesus is giving himself to us, pouring out his body and blood for us, exactly as he did at Calvary. He doesn't do it again. It is the living out of that memory made real for us in body and blood, so that we participate in Christ's sacrifice and are invited then to be sacrificed ourselves, that we offer ourselves in love to care for our families, for our children, for our parents, very often for an ill or a mentally ill sibling, being called to care for our neighbors, being called to care for our world, the cosmos, the creation that God has given to us, that we're called to pour out our life in care and concern for others. Sacrifice, meal, sacrifice, real presence. Just a reminder for us when we celebrate the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ, the Church is, as it were, ringing the bells. We used to ring the bells at the consecration. The Church is ringing the bell with this feast day to remind us that indeed this isn't a symbol. There's a great story of Flannery O'Connor being asked at a cocktail party whether she believed that it was the real presence of the Christ in the Eucharist. And she said, well, if it isn't the real presence, the hell with it. Meaning in her funny way, in her crusty way, that she was saying the real presence is everything that the Eucharist. And so on this feast of the body and blood of Christ, let us celebrate, sisters and brother, a God who loves us enough not only to give us his Spirit, but to give us his body and blood, that we may be each day, each week, each year renewed.
Please like, subscribe, or comment below.